Welcome to WP Coffee Talk with your podcast barista, Michelle Frechette. Special thanks to our amazing sponsors, Sentry Hosting, Expander Digital, GoWP, and WP Explorer. WP Coffee Talk is a proud supporter of Big Orange Heart, whose mission is to support and promote positive well-being and mental health within remote working communities. Please consider a donation to Big Orange Heart to continue to support this great mission. Welcome to WP Coffee Talk. I'm Michelle Frechette, your podcast barista, and I'm here where I get to do such cool things. I get to talk to people in the WordPress community all over the world. It's a lot easier when they're in the Western Hemisphere because our schedules link up a little bit better, and that's the case today, although I think you're an hour behind me, Robert. But my guest today is Robert Jacobi. You're in Central Time?
Central Time, right out of Chicago.
Yep, I'm in the Eastern Time over here in New York, but still, that's not too bad at all. And so, yeah, it's great to have you here. I think usually I tell people how we know each other, and honest to goodness, I cannot remember like what our origin story is. I just know that we've both been part of the WordPress community for a while, and somehow we ended up being friends and following each other and talking to each other and on the same calls and all that good stuff. So if you remember, that's great, but if you don't, that's fine too.
I think we were both bitten by the same radioactive spider. Outside of that, I have no idea. And there's just so many word camps. There's Big Orange Heart. There's,
Yeah, our paths have crossed in multiple ways over the years, for sure.
It's open source community magic. It happens all the time.
I love it. I have nothing bad to say about it at all. Well, nothing bad to say about it at all. So I always say, the first thing I always say is tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. Give us the nutshell version. We're going to do a deep dive into everything, Robert, in a little bit, but introduce yourself to us.
Wow. I'm Robert Jacobi. I run robertjacobi.com these days. It is a coffee-focused newsletter on open source, not coffee-focused at all, but it's funny that we're on Coffee Talk and I run morning coffee. I try to talk about things outside of just the WordPress space specifically. I've been in open source for, almost 20 years and was actually the leader of the Joomla project briefly, which is somewhere certainly in the top 5, if not the top 3 of most used web content management systems still today. So that's kind of given me all the education I've ever wanted on what open source is like, really from sort of the nitty gritty stuff that people don't ever see, and unless you're really committing that kind of time to it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I know you're all in with WordPress too, but that you also it's great to have feelers out in other parts of the tech community so that we're not just sitting here with our blinders on and completely, myopic about what's going on in technology, but that you're somebody who helps us remember that there's more to the technology world than WordPress, which I appreciate about you.
I mean, I hope so. I just find it fun, and I'm glad other people actually care about it as well. I mean, because WordPress isn't WordPress without hosting, without other digital economies that, connect up to it and play with it. I used to run an agency. I was part of a WordPress startup that was acquired by WP Engine. So, there's so many things, and really there's so much money in so many different places where WordPress kind of touches on it on the side somewhere or is heavily embedded, that it's fun for me to just keep up with where everything's going all the time.
I mean, I don't read those articles on your site. I'm just kidding. I actually look at them all.
Note to self.
Discontinue Michelle's subscription. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. No, I really do appreciate that you keep us focused. That yes, obviously most of us are focused very inwardly into the WordPress community, but that you keep us involved with everything. And I really do appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
Show us your mug. Tell us about your mug. I got a preview. I love it. Let's see it.
See if I can get this focused correctly. It's the Big Hug
Big
Mug.
Hug Mug. What's the story behind the Big Hug Mug?
So my wife and I, we don't watch a lot of TV, but this was when True Detective, the first season of True Detective came on, and the Big Hug Mug was like almost a character in every scene. It just existed there. And I was like, oh my God, I need to have that mug. And lo and behold, it was a Christmas or a birthday, the Big Hug Mug magically appeared. And I mean, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
kitschy. It's happy. It's not like, oh, my life stinks. I need to drink coffee mug. No, it's a big hug mug. It's you wake up in the morning,
I
you take
have I have
caffeine.
I have the other television focused iconic mug. I have the world's greatest boss mug, or world's best
Oh,
boss mug
yep.
from The Office. And I did
That
not buy it for myself. Unlike Michael Scott, I did not buy it for myself at Spencer Gifts. It was a gift from an employee.
perfect.
So what's in your mug today?
It is if I want to get extra detailed, we have an
Yes.
espresso, and
Mhm.
this is Jamaica Blue Mountain Nespresso pod squeezed into this coffee mug.
Very good. Well, I'm going to show you my mug too. I always do. So this is, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see. It'll focus.
Nice.
I helped Give WP reach 100,000 active installs in 2020. So, as you know, and most people know, I am the head of customer success at Give WP. And in the fall of last year, we did hit 100,000. You can see it actually in the background here. Happy 100K. 100,000 active installs. And so, those of us who were employed at the company at the time, we got these great mugs, which I think is so much fun. And I'm drinking sparkling water because it is 5:15. And if I drank coffee now, I would not sleep tonight. The restless legs would get.
Um, I actually felt it was an obligation to drink coffee for Coffee Talk.
That is
My
not what
last
the
coffee
instructions.
is usually at 2 p.m., so
You
the house is in a world of hurt, is all I'm saying.
you did not read the instructions that said you could have anything in your mug.
Coffee Talk.
I half expected a martini, but that's another story for another time.
It's not 5 o'clock here yet.
But it is 5 o'clock somewhere, and
That's
that is here. So tell us, I know that you said you were a part of the Joomla, but tell us how you got started in WordPress.
so WordPress. I totally have to blame on Joomla, the Joomla community, not obviously the Joomla project itself, but a lot of people in open source CMSs, they're working on multiple platforms anyway. Um, and the company Perfect Dashboard, their CEO, Alex Kuchek, he had built a product for auto updating for both Joomla and WordPress. Jumped on board with Perfect Dashboard, and that's really how I got fully loaded into WordPress. And that was, in internet time, I guess it was a long time ago, but in human years, it was only about 4 years ago, really,
Oh,
that I
okay.
got very embedded into what's going on with WordPress and how the community
Oh.
works and the day to day, and then I just
So,
completely dove in.
so to some of us, you're still kind of a newbie.
Probably to a lot of people, actually. I mean,
Maybe, maybe so.
there's so many. What's interesting about WordPress is so many community members have literally been there from the start, and we're not talking
Yeah.
Matt Mullenweg, but we're talking really just the depth and breadth of the community across different companies,
Mm-hmm.
solopreneurs, small agencies, bigger agencies. Uh, they may have started their company 5 years, 6 years ago, but they were using WordPress, 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
it's really a testament to sort of both the power of the economy of WordPress, but also the community that keeps people happy and engaged because they're all going to the word camps and hanging out at the meetups.
Mm-hmm.
Back when we could in person and obviously virtually all the time these days.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say like, in internet years and things like that, because like honest to goodness, like 4 years ago when I was giving like my first WordCamp talks, I was saying, so I've been using WordPress about 10 years, blah, blah. I actually went back and looked at it. I've been using WordPress 10 years this year. Like my first WordPress website was 10 years ago this year. So it just
I
feels
won't
like
tell
longer.
anyone. We'll just keep it under wraps here. No one's going to find out about this.
It's like dog years. It's internet years. It's some strange metric and it doesn't really matter.
And thrown COVID years, and now we're all,
Right? I mean, it's been a decade last year alone.
no argument.
Absolutely. So let's move on. I'm going to ask the next question, which is, and I always say this really weirdly, so I've got to work on how I ask some of my questions because I wrote them. I should be able to say them much more easily than I do sometimes. What is something that you think that we as designers, builders, developers don't focus enough attention on when we're making websites that would make them stronger, better sites for the end user?
Boy, that's a really easy question. I'm just going to throw out one word. No.
I was
uh,
really intrigued there for a minute. I was like, wow.
boy, oh boy. I think, there's the traditional answer. We lose sight of the end user. We get caught up in the tech. We're having fun with, the latest and greatest features and functionality.
Hmm.
Uh, so many freelancer solopreneurs in WordPress or other projects love it for loving its sake. And that's great, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're completely aware of how it's being utilized, who the, real end user, parentheses users are. And it's great if you just love doing it. Like, I don't build other people's WordPress sites, but I love futzing around with mine. And that,
Yeah.
and there's no stress about, who's going to be upset or whatnot. I'll find out, and I can tweak it. But the coding and development aspect of that is sort of the hobby. It's not a hobby;
Right.
it does pay the bills at the end of the day. But um, on sort of that agency mindset is y- people lose sight that it's still business and it's day to day work,
Hmm.
and you as much as you may enjoy what you're doing, don't lose the sight of the fact that you're running a business. You got to pay your bills, you got to satisfy end user requirements. It's work. I love cooking. I will never ever become a chef for hire in any universe because that would take the fun out of it and turn it into business.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, in these kinds of especially open source projects, especially WordPress, we conflate the two, the fun and the work of it, which is great because I do enjoy having fun at work. But when you're at work, work comes first because
Hmm.
you can't, pay rent, buy groceries, get gas without, always focusing on that.
Hmm.
And focusing on work is hard work.
It is.
Um, so to be,
Yeah.
successful in any way, shape, or form, you need to kind of like check the enjoyment factor of it. It's like, is my
Hmm.
enjoyment of this actually making me less successful in
Right.
a crazy way? I mean,
Yeah.
and if it's fun and hobby and make a few shillings here and there doing stuff, that's great. If it's really something that you're fully focused on, you've got to remember it's work. Work
Hmm.
is work. There's nothing
Hobbies
wrong with
usually
that.
hobbies usually cost you a lot of money. Work should make you money even if you're enjoying it.
Bingo. That
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
Yeah. I
If,
think
if WordPress is your hobby, great. My hobby in WordPress is tinkering with code every once in a while. But I'm not selling that tinkering because
right.
then it would become work and I'd really have to focus on it as,
Yeah.
something that's a very revenue generating thing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense actually. Along those lines, actually, because it sounds like you've learned a little bit of lesson here and there. What's something that you wish you'd known earlier in your WordPress career that you've learned since that might have made life a little bit easier?
Since I'm not in the traditional WordPress career space, uh, uh, I'll take it from what I learned running an agency, and
Yeah,
that's
sure.
uh, value selling. Value selling, value selling, value selling. It sounds like some mythical, esoteric concept, but you can reap so many more rewards for yourself and your customers by digging deep and understanding what the customer, what the value they're trying to figure out that they're going to achieve by having a new website or adding functionality. And and you'll be able to reward yourself as the developer or the agency owner by by pricing accordingly. Not all
Hmm.
things are equal. If I'm building a website for Amazon.com, guess what? I'm going to charge them a lot more, not just because I know it's Amazon.com and they have billions and trillions of dollars. It's because they have a intrinsically different understanding of the value that's supposed to be provided, and that includes all the legal paperwork. That includes all the procurement processes. That includes all the insurances that I, as an agency or freelancer, must have to work with them. And since they value that you've done all that work to get up to snuff, they will pay you more for that, and then you can actually scale that better because then now
Hmm.
you've invested in yourself to make yourself more valuable. Now you should charge for that value, not just the hourly rate stuff. And so much of that is getting commoditized anyway in a global economy that you
Hmm.
need to look to what makes you special? With what kind of knowledge do you have in a specific industry? What kind of work have you done to make your business professional and valuable to your customers?
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of a story from my MBA. I was in I think it was a strategy class, but it doesn't really matter what kind of class it was. And the teacher told us the story about the guy, this big plant that was shut down because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with the machine, that it wasn't working. So they called in the specialist, and he comes in and he walks around and he listens and he walks, and finally he takes out a piece of chalk and puts an X on this one spot of the machine. He says, replace that part, it'll work just fine. Sends them a bill for like $30,000. And they're like, $30,000, it only took you 15 minutes and a piece of chalk. He said, yeah, well, the first dollar was for the piece of chalk. The other 29,999 was knowing where to put the X.
And that's exactly it. And also, if it took me more than 15 minutes, how much money did you lose by not having that piece of machinery working?
Right.
That's the other half of the equation.
Absolutely.
Companies will pay to get stuff working faster, quicker if they know it's going to really happen. And
Yeah.
that's part of having that experience and sort of tool set to be like, yeah, I can get this done in 15 minutes. And yes, it should cost $30,000 because
Yep.
if it took another hour, you would have lost $50,000 because you weren't producing
Right.
product.
Exactly. So know your worth, but also invest in your worth. So all of those
Yep.
things work together. Absolutely. I know you've been to WordCamps. I know you've been to meetups and other kinds of events. As you look back over the last 4 or so years and you think about all the different WordPress events that you've attended, is there an experience at any one of those events that kind of stands out to you as like a pivotal moment for you? And what was it?
I'm trying to remember the first WordCamp I ever went to, and I think it was actually WordCamp Phoenix. And the only comparison I had at the time was Joomla Days,
Okay.
which are ostensibly the same as WordCamps, but they're so much smaller. And that's nothing. That's not a slight against Joomla. I just didn't realize how big WordCamps were. I'm like, oh my god, I'm in a deer in headlights. There's 1,000 people here. And uh, I guess what stood out, and I was just going to go back to that first one, is that it was so easy to connect with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
From executives at big hosting companies to solopreneurs, and that community sort of ethos, which I'd hoped would exist in WordPress as it does in other open source projects, was totally
Mm-hmm.
there, and that's I always find that just very striking. And I was like, okay, I'm in. You got me. This works.
Yeah, I agree though. The community is so inviting and so supportive. And, I always say I acknowledge the fact that it's not perfect, right? So there are people in the community that don't like me for whatever reason. And there are people who I could take or leave as well, right? And that's because there's hundreds of thousands of people and you can't 100% like everybody. And that's okay, right? I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I don't get it, but but seriously, right? We don't all like
How could that
everybody.
possibly be?
I know. But honestly, right? So some people may look at me and say and think that I have ulterior motives in helping the community. I don't. I just really like to give back to the community that has given me so much. But I understand if people don't always take things at face value. We all have our own sets of experiences that come from. But even with that and that, that acknowledgement, I would not trade this community for almost any other community I've ever been involved in, including my
It's
family.
so you've actually touched on something, so we'll probably wind up skipping a whole million other questions. So I'm going to get on a little bar stool here.
Go for it.
I think where open source communities, and I even touched on this recently, uh, kind of shoot themselves in the foot, is that it's everyone. There's no problem with ulterior motives. All of us should have one. Why not? The more we actually embed ourselves in projects like this, well, we still need to pay the bills. So why wouldn't we, be trying to meet partners and clients and sell advertising and have affiliates? And I mean, that's part of the day-to-day ecosystem. If we were all billionaires and could be completely philanthropic about this, great. But that's literally not the world we live in anywhere.
And we could word
So
camp on our yachts.
yeah, exactly. And I'd be flying everyone over on helicopters, very eco-friendly helicopters.
Of
Um,
course.
but I think, and I've seen this in other projects over and over again. There are people who think there needs to be a very bright line between you're a true patriot to the project versus you're just a consumer of the project.
Yeah.
And in my head, the irony is it's GPL, it's open source. It's like giving a gift. You give a gift, that person can do whatever they want with it. And you,
Mhm.
you have to accept the fact that you're giving a gift. You love the project, you can steer the project, you can do all sorts of work around it. At the end of the day, because it's open source, it's a gift you're giving to the rest of the world. And some people are going to take that and do whatever they want with it, run with it. They're going to, do some null plugin nonsense, whatever. They're going to piss you off. But that doesn't matter. You've given a gift, and that gift is actually more respected and cherished by many more people than
Yeah.
the outliers who might take advantage of the situation. So what?
Yeah.
What I
I
like
guess.
about open source is that it really is at the first level a benevolent act,
Mhm.
and for it to be to complete that benevolence, you have to just let it go and be like, I put it out into the world. What I put out was good. It'll bring back more good than bad, and that's a wonderful thing. And
Mhm.
I have no problem with hardcore commerce and business taking part in the process. Of course not. A lot of these companies put back just as much as they've taken. They haven't
Mhm.
taken anything. It's open source that they've received.
Yeah.
So
I guess the assumption is when somebody says ulterior motives, they always imply sinister sinister ulterior motives, right? So like when I say somebody doesn't like me, it's not that they think that I'm just out to make money, but that there's a sinister quality to that. And for me anyway, I'm not sinister. They can assume whatever they'd like about me. But the truth is that I'm not out to get anybody. I'm not out to hurt anybody. I'm just really just out to make the world a better place if I can. So
I mean, that's it. Are you left-handed? That's really going to be the more important question.
I'm not actually. Is
Because I
that
think
okay?
sinister. I'm going to check my weird trivia knowledge. I think sinister has something to do with left-handedness by like etymology, not by anything else. But I think like in Latin something that means left. I don't know. Anyway,
Do you know? Here's a very much aside. Did you know that the word sin actually means to miss the mark, to not get a bullseye? It does not imply any level of good or bad, or good versus evil. It literally just means that, like, the original term sin meant I shot for the mark and I fell short. I fell to the side.
I did not know that. And all I know is I'm going to be looking up sin and sinister etymologies right after this recording.
I'll expect your message through Slack after you're done.
Well, like gauche,
Yeah, it means
that's
left.
that means left. But
French.
that's so
Yeah.
gauche. That's so left.
That's right. Like in Rochester and a lot of cities, it's the east side and the west side, right? And the east side is always the upper, and the west side is always the lower. And I figured out why one time. Because living on the west side, as I always have, when I used to drive to work in the city, I always drove into the sun, and on the way home, I drove into the sun. And so
Yep.
that's why the west is always less desirable, because you're driving with the sunshine in your eyes. At
Well,
least
so
that's
here in Chicago, we have no east. It's all west.
right. Because you
So
have
you're
a
either
lake.
north side or south side.
We have a lake too. I'm a mile south of Lake Ontario, but it is to my north. so, so tell us a little bit about how I want to talk. I mean, yes, I love everything that has to do with Robert Jacobi, but I want to talk about your morning coffee. I want to know how long have you been doing it? Because I don't know that I was aware. If I signed up close to the beginning, if you've been doing it for years, how I became aware of it, I couldn't tell you, but I do subscribe and I look at it every single day. Um, I've been in it more than once, which has been exciting too. But tell me about like what got you working on that and how it works into your overall plan of what you do.
So it goes back a couple years when Perfect Dashboard was acquired by WP Engine. It was kind of like, okay, what do I do next? And what's interesting, what's fun, but can still be real work. And a lot of that was networking. I mean, in
Yeah.
some crazy sense of the word, I I look to figure out how to monetize hanging out, working hard at events, WordCamps, other conferences, things like CloudFest or a number of the other hosting related events, SaaS related events, and create connections, primarily focusing on partnerships between different types of tool sets. So if you're a SaaS, you might be investigating how you're doing hosting. If you're an agency, you're probably integrating multiple tools, how to build those kinds of partnerships around, and traveling a lot and making these things happen. Well, then COVID hit, and I've been puttering along with some content on robertjacobi.com, and all the travel disappeared. Like, 1 year ago today, gosh, 1 year ago today, pretty much, I was canceling about 20 WordCamps. So I was just like, okay, we are in a new world.
Yes.
So how do I take advantage of this in the virtual space? What's going to happen? We don't know how long this is going to be. We don't know the ramifications. Let's just start writing content. I'm reading all this stuff anyway, so let's just say something and see if anyone else cares.
Yeah.
And there's enough people that actually do care about the interconnectivity and strategy around some of these companies in WordPress hosting, SaaS, and the occasional random crazy tidbits.
And you don't just like aggregate information though and just spit out a bunch of links, which is what I like about it too, is it's your hot take on it, right? So you have an opinion about things, but
And
not so
they're very hot takes.
it's hot coffee. It has supposed to be hot. But you're giving your opinion, but in an open way where you're not trying to persuade, right? So this is how I see it, kind of thing. Like kind of you're the Walter Cronkite of WordPress. I'm just gonna say that. And the younger people who listen will have no clue who I'm talking about. That's okay. Look it up. He's on Google. Google Walter Cronkite. But seriously, like you give like you talk about it, and let's be honest, journalism is not journalism without opinion, right? Because no matter who you are, you're writing about it, you have a bias. There is always a bias to journalism. But if you do it right, you're not trying to influence other people to your bias. And I think you do a good job of that.
I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything. I mean, this is
Exactly.
it's like you said, it's pretty hot. Um, the critique I've gotten is it's so hot that the editing is bad. So
I think the writing's good. I don't know.
I'm getting the occasional editorial help in emails like, you really messed up that sentence. Please add commas and change the possessive on its. But
Those could be annoying to people, but they can be overlooked if it's a good story.
and it's one of those things that there's so much interesting stuff going on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm addicted to I'm taking some of my addictions and just like finding a constructive way to express them.
Right.
So I have certainly over 100 RSS feeds that I'm going through multiple times a day. Some of those get flagged more importantly than others, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's tons of content that's getting skimmed all the time. And sometimes I just try to make connections like, okay, so if DigitalOcean just filed for an IPO, and I've been thinking about WP Engine going for an IPO in 2021, what are the connections between those two things, and why would that necessarily facilitate something else? And I'll tell you why I think it, and if you think I'm crazy for it, that's fine. And if you agree, all the more entertaining. But
You can always go back later and say, well, how well did that post age?
hey, and I've gone back on some posts, and I don't necessarily re-edit the post, but I'll put an update like, oh boy, this was just did not work. I was totally off. Um,
I sinned on this one. I did not hit the bullseye.
exactly. I did that recently with oh my goodness, what did I do? Oh, oh boy. Um, I slightly sinned on the whitehouse.gov relaunch. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I still think in some crazy way I'm right. I think there's still something technically not the way I would have done it. But But yeah,
But yeah,
I did have, I literally had a post that said, whitehouse.gov, mea culpa.
there you go. So
Hey, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm not going to be shy about telling you. It's easier to get it out of the way and be like,
you know what, and you're more relatable as a person when you can say that you've misinterpreted something or that you were wrong about something. So I think that makes you more relatable, as somebody who's doling out the news, as it were. So
yeah, I don't
the
know if
other thing,
anyone, I don't know if anyone at 10 Up's going to answer my phone calls now, but
you gotta know who to DM on Twitter. That's all there is to it. The other thing I will say is that you also have a very generous heart. And so, I mean, I'm not just here to flatter you. If I didn't like your heart, I would probably not say so. I just wouldn't say anything. But you and I both have what I refer to as big orange hearts. And so, you were so kind to put out at least a couple times, I think, about my tattoo fundraiser that I'm actually, and it's scheduled for June. I want to say 22nd, because that's when the next COVID appointment, the way COVID scheduling is going, was available. And I'm getting the big orange heart logo tattooed on my wrist, around my give tattoo there. And you were kind enough to post that in the coffee, but I can't remember, morning coffee, in the morning coffee. But also you've been a media partner for Big Orange Heart and around WordFest and things like that. And you, by the way, happy birthday. Yesterday was your birthday. You donated your birthday. Sorry, I missed the Twitch party. I had some things going on at home, but yeah, you danced that up and you had some fun and you raised some money through your birthday for Big Orange Heart too. So what draws you to being, part of Big Orange Heart and the way that you have been so generous in your time and efforts there?
um, boy, I'm gonna. It really starts with the WP London meetup group. Um, COVID hit, and it's looking around for okay, what meetups are out there, and it was just I didn't know anything about WP up and up until 2020, which
Mm-hmm.
is the former Big Orange, former name for Big Orange Heart,
Right.
and so I really had, that was just not part of the radar, and started going to WP London meetups, and that's all run by the team that runs Big Orange Heart for the most part. It's a
Mm-hmm.
volunteer organization on both sides. And I was like, there's something nice about these people, but like really nice and really engaging and outgoing. Like what's going on? And then I started getting deeper into what's going on with Big Orange Heart and the focus on mental well-being and health, especially for work from home people. Hello, and, who hasn't, especially in the WordPress space, who hasn't been doing that for the last 12 to
Yeah.
13 months, if not longer. I was like, okay, this is stupidly valuable,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm feeling the itchiness of being trapped at home, and I may be better off than others in having the space to do that. So I'm
Right.
like, if I'm feeling, kind of the, well, oh boy, the anxiety, the stress, all that,
Yeah.
there are people that are a million times worse off. And I'm like, okay, let's dig deep, dive in and
Yeah.
figure out how to help and support that. Cause it's one of those organizations, charities that's not necessarily on the, map and radar. I mean, there are certainly many mental health charities out there, but I really liked the idea that it was so focused on, um, I guess, how do I put it? The lonely worker? Maybe that's
Yeah.
a way. I mean, because
The remote worker who's, I would
well,
say, like the,
remote, but I think, but really,
yeah.
the,
What comes along with that?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And there are people who live in households of people who are remote workers and still experience that loneliness and that anxiety and the depression that comes with working alone, even if you're in a house full of people. As opposed to me, when I'm, during the pandemic, when I was working, I mean, I'm in an office now and there are 3 other people that work here in the space with me. But when I'm working from home, it's just me. I have 3 cats and me. And that's it. So, I went for like 4 months without seeing anybody but the person who dropped my groceries off at the door, like waving from the car kind of thing. And so, like, I got a real taste of what it's like to actually be that remote worker who has nobody. in their physical space. And so, but all of those people have similar experiences,
Yep.
and all of those people need support. So,
And I just thought it was just such a unique. Uh, it's going to sound so businessy, unique market to focus on, but a unique problem to look to solve because
mm-hmm.
I don't think it gets addressed in that kind of specificity. I think that there's
Right.
so many ways to help support stress, anxiety, and all that. But it's a unique situation to be never around people, and I'm
Right.
not used to it. I am insanely social. I love being out there. That it's I was traveling. Oh God, I was planning traveling 150 days last year. Yeah, that I traveled for 6, and I've
Yeah.
been, you know, eh,
Yeah.
at the mild end of it, just stir crazy. On,
Mm-hmm.
on the bad days, there are bad days, and everyone has
Yeah.
them, and we need to be forgiving of them, but we need to have tools and communities to help support that as well.
Yeah.
And I've just thought Big Orange Heart is a brilliant organization for it.
Well, we're glad to have you be part of the organization, and for sure, I think you were part of. Not only were you a media partner for WordFest, but I think you were an MC as well. Were you not?
I I was a sponsor, a media partner, so a sponsor initially, and then
That's right.
separately as a
Yep.
media partner and an MC.
Yeah.
Yep.
And were you emceeing with Kathy? Was that Kathy Zant?
Yes.
You guys are so fun together. I
Oh
was like,
gosh, we had a
I was
blast.
emceeing. I had a blast in my room too, but I still had FOMO from all the other groups that were talking. I wanted to be in every room all the time. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So
And don't forget, we did Stake of the Word in December. That all
yes,
we raised a not WordFest money, but a good deal of money, especially on like
S-
1 week turnaround
several
for Big
thousand
Orange Heart.
dollars. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And by the way, I'm still waiting for my steak. Just saying. But here's the thing. So when we do finally get to meet again in person, we're going out for steak. We can buy our own steaks, but we're getting real steak at some point. if
You're a
you're
meat
and if
eater,
you're
we're in.
I was gonna say if you're vegan, you can have your version of whatever that is.
Impossible Steak or Beyond
There you
Steak.
go. I'm all about the filet mignon, but that's another story. So I'm gonna move into our rapid fire questions. I always
Uh-oh.
ask them. I ask them rapidly. Take as much time as you need to answer them. Yeah, that's pretty much the instructions. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yes.
What are if I can get my own mouth to work? What are 2 or 3 must-have plugins that you would recommend to somebody building their own website?
This is a hard one because I don't do WordPress web development. So I only focus on the things that I really need. I'll tell you the one that's surprisingly became insanely useful for me, and it's just called Redirection. And it
Mm-hmm.
just helps me manage 301s and other redirects. And I wind up using it to track if I have an affiliate link in an article or for a sponsor of the week, that I can also keep track on how many people have clicked internally, and it's a 301 redirect elsewhere. So that actually is the one I would say is the most valuable one I have used.
That sounds like a really valuable one to somebody who's into blogging and things like that for sure. Absolutely. All
And I
right,
guess
I won't
if
make
there's other ones, I mean, I just wrote a post today about how I'm going to completely redo the site over the next couple of weeks to be as much core WordPress as possible. So I'm trying to actually get rid of as many plugins as possible because I like a WordPress hobbyist on occasion, you may collect way too many plugins, and sometimes you've got to release them back into the wild. And uh, there's one that I've been using for SSL redirects, which I don't even think I need anymore, but I did certainly when I started the site.
mm-hmm.
That's also valuable because I want to make sure that SSL is working correctly.
Yeah. What's the most you've ever seen on another person's website? Most number of plugins. Have you ever opened up a website and seen like just an insane number of plugins?
I've heard stories, but again, I don't work directly
Okay.
with other WordPress, but I have heard stories of hundreds, which is
Yeah.
I feel horrified that I have 19 active plugins.
Yeah, 74 is the most I've seen on a website, and and they were like duplicate plugins. Like there wasn't just one SEO; they had 4 SEO plugins. They had 4 spam plugins, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. It was like a little insane. There is no such thing as too many if they're doing the things you need them to do. That's my opinion. right? If they do the things you need them to do and you don't have another way to do that, because not everybody can code and not everybody can do those things like that for themselves. But there is too many. If you're not using them, they're duplicates, they're sitting there, in inactive status, then we have to talk.
Yeah, I because it's so easy to install a plugin, I've been
Yeah.
lazy. I mean, there's no reason I have to have such and such plugin. I could actually go and update my theme and just hard code some of these things in there. Because for all intents and purposes, any like Google Analytics codes, that doesn't need to be in a plugin. I'm just being lazy.
And sometimes I'll use iframes with code instead of actually putting a plugin that would do what those iframes would do. So I've learned to decrease some of my own plugins that way too.
I have been playing with I think it's called Code Snippets.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the voodoo plugin because
It lets you do PHP.
yes, but in weird ways. Like you can add hooks for on page load, on plugin you fire, and all that kind of fun stuff. I'm
Yeah,
like, this.
I left a question mark where it didn't belong once though, and the whole site white screened on me, and I had to go in and I figured it out because I'm not a coder. But that's when I had to call somebody who was a coder and say, "Can you tell me what I?" Okay. Did you have a mentor at any point, or have you had a mentor at any point in your WordPress journey, officially or unofficially? Who was it? And if not, is there somebody that, separate from the next question about admiration, but is there somebody that you have emulated or looked up to and tried to learn from, even if they weren't officially a mentor?
Uh, so some of these will probably cross over regardless.
Okay.
Um, Certainly, running the agency, I actually hired my mentor. He's not in the WordPress space, but we had belonged to some networking, business networking groups, and he said, "I think you need to solve these problems." I was like, "Boy, I think you're absolutely right." Um, so he was hired on as COO,
Mm-hmm.
but wound up really teaching me a lot more than he was getting paid for, and that was great. And we still work together on many other things. And he's on the top 6 of the iPhone must calls and emergency fast dials, whatever it's called.
The
It more
stars.
so the what?
The stars, the ones that are in
Yes.
the star. Yeah. I don't know what they're
uh,
called either.
in the WordPress universe, I really, and this is just going to go to his head. Um, I really admire Chris Lemma's business acumen and focus, and uh, he is amazing to watch. Whether it's sort of day to day work, focusing on process, uh, just outside of the box thinking. I've really enjoyed just really everything he does. Whether I agree with him on X, Y, or Z sometimes is besides the point.
Mm-hmm.
I like the critical thinking and analysis that goes into what he may spit out at the end of the day. So
He has
that's
a
really been.
he has a generosity of information as well. He likes to share so that other people can prosper from his knowledge, which I think is great.
And the worst part is, I always screw up his last name, and I've known him for now like 3+ years,
You
and
said it right.
I'm always paranoid every time I say it. I'm
That's so
gonna get a
funny.
phone call later that says, "Jacobi, you messed up my name."
No, he's gonna say Jacobi. Okay, next question. Who is somebody in the WordPress space that you admire and why?
Uh, uh, there are a bunch. I will pick one because I just got off the phone with him before our call. I love Brad Morrison. He knows his WordPress hosting industry, open source stuff. He is just a gosh darn good guy, and you know, I when I first started doing the independent consulting work, uh, he was literally my first client, and it was because he was actually a client before at the other company and was like, "I don't know what you're doing, but I need to talk to you, and we're gonna get stuff." And I was like, "Wow, you're seeing things that I didn't expect, and that's fantastic." And we just keep up all the time, and that's that brings a smile. Um, Sort of tangential to, well, Boy, I'm going to go through a bunch of people, uh,
Go for it.
aren't I?
No more than
Uh,
5. We're going to limit you to 5.
okay, so if I don't say Mike Demo, I'll probably get a phone call and get shot. He has been uh, an amazing human being that I've known for, gosh, I think now 10 years. We met each other in Joomla World, and he's I wouldn't say he's a mentor, but he's certainly a guide and a map builder in WordPress. He knew so much about WordPress, having already been in the industry a few years before I jumped in, that his knowledge and sort of direction and foresight was invaluable. So, you know, everyone should just get to know Brad Morrison, Mike Demopoulos, who was Jason Nickerson from cPanel. He, again, that's not necessarily super WordPress focused, but they do focus on the WordPress toolkit and all that kind of technology.
He's in the community, that's for sure.
He's definitely in the community. Okay, so I got
it's International Women's Day. Any women on that list of yours?
That's so. I have to give. We don't talk very often. Probably haven't talked in a year or so. But Lisa Box out of WP Engine, brilliant woman who gave Perfect Dashboard, a chance at WP Engine, and that I think worked out great for everyone. Kudos. Frankly, the whole WP Engine crew has such a diverse team of brilliant people. It's really, I find it, I'm just going to say it, I think it is the shining example in the WordPress space for how a corporation can not only talk about diversity, but actually really be successful with it. It blows my mind away. I don't think it's any surprise that the CEO is also a woman. So, Heather at WP Engine, she is making that work. They eat their dog food. They're doing it, and I
That's
certainly
awesome.
expect them to IPO at some point this year too. So I mean, this is all going in the right direction for them. I've had these diversity conversations for a long time, and as a father or daughter who wants to be very successful, I would like her to be very successful in tech because that's the kind of guy I am.
Sure.
I recognize that there's just a gap, and I don't know where it happens in the process, but it's, okay, I want to put together a panel of 100 people, and if I can like magically find 20%, some of that's going to be on me just because maybe I haven't done the outreach as I could have done better in life. That's fair. I think there's just been, those blocks to get people to those levels. So you're like, oh, it's no brainer. Of course there's Michelle. Of course there's, Robbie Ader. Of course there's Ryan Kinney. Of course there's, Heather from WP Engine. Of course there's Lisa Box from WP Engine. Josepha, I mean, come on. Who's,
absolutely
the WordPress.org sort of executive chairman, or I can't remember the exact title, but yes, executive in charge.
She knows her stuff.
She knows her stuff. I mean, there's a huge community, but I think that in some of the more moneyed aspects of it, women have not been as successful, not for lack of ability, but just sort of it's that tech thing. And there's friction, and I think that's being peeled away and made easier. Easier meaning that you can see everyone better.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not a 20-year-old in tech anymore, so I've seen how it's been an insanely male dominated. Let's be very clear, white male dominated industry.
Right.
Since the invention of the chip.
That's why Allie Nimmons and I started Underrepresented in Tech.com. Which we could have an article on the Morning Coffee about that sometime if you want. We'll do an interview.
Done.
Sounds good. All right, let's keep moving here. What's something you want to learn in WordPress but that you haven't tackled yet? I forget my language, but you haven't tackled yet.
I would actually like to know how, even though it's probably not going to serve any grand purpose, I'd like to figure out how to build some proper Gutenberg blocks. I
You are
mean,
not the first person to say that. A lot of people are interested in really learning the technology behind that. Like you said, whether they're going to actually capitalize on it or not, it's another story, but understanding it and being able to do something with it.
I started out in the industry as a coder, so
Mhm.
so I, even just for novelty's sake, I built my own plugins just to play around with
Mhm.
stuff, you know, different themes and whatnot. Um,
Yep. I built
but
my one and only plugin last year just to have a better understanding, and that was the end of my coding.
um, I didn't find. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty easy. But all the jQuery and all that on the Gutenberg side, I'm like, oh, do I really want to spend all that time figuring this out when there's so many already there?
Saying it in WP Coffee Talk doesn't mean that you have to do it. It isn't written in stone. It's just curiosity. What's something you'd think you'd like to learn? So you're safe still. What is one of the biggest WordPress mistakes you've ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Biggest WordPress mistakes I've ever made. Luckily, I haven't been doing it long enough to make that many mistakes, or at least giant, horrendous mistakes. Um, I'd say the first iteration of the site, I oh, this will be the easy one. I didn't quite at the time have the full concept of child themes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just went in there and hacked up some thing, and then the update would occur, and I was like, oh god, I
What just
broke
happened to it all?
everything. Roll back, roll back, roll back. That was probably the biggest sort of learning curve thing. Like, oh yeah, this
Yeah.
child themes, thing is really important.
Turns out that it is.
Turns out you
As
will
such.
totally blow up your site if you decide to just hack away at a core theme. And this was, and I should have known better, but I was just
You were learning.
I was learning, and because in Joomla world you have the same thing. You
Hmm.
want to do overrides. You don't want to hack the core template because
Yeah.
this
I will
happens.
say that probably 95% of the people who've answered this question, it was during a learning experience that they did something wrong. So the others were just like boneheaded moves. For example, just go back and listen to Chris Wigman's episode and you'll find out how he killed 23,000 websites in a single day. Anyway, that's another story. So the flip side is, what is your proudest WordPress moment? Tell us that.
This WordPress moment being on Coffee Talk.
Oh, kiss up.
um,
I do appreciate that though.
gosh, I haven't really. I mean,
Can I tell you my proudest moment for you? Or
sure,
my
absolutely.
maybe most fun moment for you was the T-shirt that GoWP made for you. That
Oh
was
my
your T-shirt.
goodness. So I was tempted to wear it, but I was like, well, this isn't the Go WP show. But yes,
Okay.
the alien. I mean, I'm sorry, the robot
With the plaid scarf and the martini.
with the it's not just the plaid scarf. It's whoever the plaid scarf people are.
Burberry or something.
Burberry, yes, the Burberry scarf with the martini and the
And the
mustache.
mustache. You saw mine, didn't you? Mine has
The Wonder
Preston
Woman.
is Wonder Woman. Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Um, God, I can't think of anything that really jumps out. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that's
was a
good.
wonderful surprise. But I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
I
Yeah.
don't think I've uh what's the phrase I'm looking for? Was it earn my chops? Something my chops? I do have
I
an
know.
excuse. English is my second language, so sometimes I mess this up.
That's
Um,
okay.
uh,
So one of the things though that and this is true for me, so I'm assuming it's true for you. There've been a lot of really important things that have happened over the time, and to choose one is difficult. It really is. It's like publishing my first website, humongously proud moment. Being accepted to speak at WordCamp India, incredibly big moment. Matt Mullenweg is going to be on the show. I'm interviewing him on Thursday. Incredibly proud moment. But there's so many that it's to choose one above the others is actually very difficult to do. So I'm going to let you have a pass on that if that fits for you as well.
I don't know if it's a pass or anything. I guess it's just I've had a lot of them, and I don't.
Which is good.
And I can't say that one that totally blows my mind at the moment, because there's that like second level where there's so many that no one's kind of crept up yet and said that's it.
This is the moment. Well, if you do, you can always tweet me about it, because then it'll be like, oh yeah, that was cool.
By the way, he answered this question 4 years later.
Exactly. Like, I should have thought of this one. All right. If you weren't working in the web tech fields or technology, current career, like take it all off the plate, what's another career that you might like to attempt?
That's a hard. I'm a freaky tech geek. I love tech, and so if it's not internet tech, I'd probably be in some other weird tech thing, just because I like the speed of it, no matter what it is. I mean, whether you're in chemistry or aerospace, or there's a speed to science and technology and outside of the internet that really keeps your mind going, and you can't stop thinking about it, because if you do, then you're out of it. And I want to grow old and aware and cognizant and curious, and being in a fast moving field, whatever it is, kind of just hits the sweet spot for me.
That's awesome.
I mean, I do have hobbies. I like to cook, I like to garden, I like to travel. I wouldn't want to turn any of those into work.
Yeah, I had somebody say retired. If I wasn't working, I want to be retired. When you could do all those things and you don't have to worry about it being a career.
Oh, there is literally no retirement in our family. It's not allowed.
Yeah, me either. They're gonna have to bury me with the laptop. That's all there is to it. What's something on your bucket list?
Oh, well, the super bucket list. Oh, this one's easy. I want to grab one of those SpaceX or Virgin Galactic flights. That's the primo ultimate bucket list item. I want to get into space.
That's awesome. What's another one that might be slightly more attainable? I'm not saying you won't do that.
That's very fair.
Richard Branson, if you listen to WP Coffee Talk.
There are a lot of places I would just like to travel to. And so the bucket list items for traveling are huge. I mean, I've done the parachuting, done that once. And I don't need to do it again. That was fine.
It's not on my list.
I've never, outside of India, I haven't been anywhere really within Asia. So there's a whole bunch of bucket lists items in, hardcore Asia, Southeast Asia, all of that. I would say a lot of the bucket list items really focus around travel. They really do.
I only have two things on my bucket list at this point in time. One is to give a TED Talk. And I already know what the topic is and all of that. The other is, and if he's listening, Josh Groban, are you listening? I want to sing a duet with Josh Groban. It doesn't have to be recorded. It doesn't have to be like on a stage. I just really want to sing a duet with Josh Groban. He won't return my tweets. Okay, next question.
He won't return my tweets, and there's a strange court order at the doorstep.
I know. It's like I have to temper how often I tweet him, because I don't need that. Don't need the court order. Show us or tell us about a hidden talent that you have that the WordPress community might not be aware of.
I don't know if I have any hidden talents. You kind of see what you get here. Oh my goodness.
Do you play an instrument? Is there anything that you do with your
don't
family?
Play an instrument. Gosh, I feel so small all of a sudden.
That's just, when it comes to Robert Jacobi, what you see is what you get. He puts it all out there. There's nothing hidden.
There's not much missing from that. I think I've told you all the fun things I like to do. I'm a really good skier, though. I haven't skied in a long time. I've been skiing since my parents could put me up, standing straight. So that's probably sort of the most hidden one, is that.
I didn't know that about you. So
really good.
Awesome. So how do we find you online? What's your website? What's your Twitter handle, like social media, that kind of stuff?
Luckily, this is also easy. So it's robertjacobi.com, Twitter @robertjacobi.
Perfect.
And you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, but those are certainly the easiest and most user-friendly.
Absolutely. And for anybody listening, we will absolutely have these in the show notes. Go to WPCoffeeTalk.com, search for Robert's episode, and all of the information of things we've talked about today will be on the show notes there. Anything else you'd like to share before we sign off for the day?
I've had too much coffee today. That's gonna be a problem. Gosh, there's so many cool things going on this year. I could spend another 15 minutes to like things I want to share. I mean, 2021 has actually been so much faster than I actually expected it. There's actually bigger events that are happening that there's going to be like the Web Agency Summit coming up. There's going to be Cloud Fest coming up. I've seen already large in-person events, not in the WordPress space, but planned for the second half of this year. I think there's just certainly this pent up energy and momentum to make things happen. And I think we're all gonna have to try to maybe even keep it a little bit, because I know I'm gonna be just like exploding at the first WordCamp. It's just gonna be, Rob everywhere, and it's just gonna be a disaster.
Hug all the people. Big hug mug. That's right. Absolutely. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure to have you here today. I can't believe we haven't done this before. But I'm very grateful that you're here with me today. Thank you so much for being part of WP Coffee Talk. And I don't know when this is going to air, but by the time people hear me say that, it will already be listening to it air, so it doesn't matter anyway. But thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on calls and online, and hopefully someday, please, dear God, in person again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Michelle.
It's been my pleasure.